I never thought a clumsy mistake at a costume party would change my entire life, much less bind me to the queen of the underworld herself. It all started so innocently. My best friend, Maya, had practically dragged me to this Halloween masquerade at some fancy, ridiculously old mansion. You know, the type creaky floors, portraits with eyes that follow you, the whole 9 yards. Everyone was dressed up like gods, monsters, or royalty. The theme was epic, and I, being my usual sarcastic self, decided to go as a gothic bride. I had a black lace dress, a dramatic veil, and a cheap, oversized plastic ring I'd snagged from a thrift shop for $1. I thought it was ironic, a bit of fun, totally harmless, famous last words, right? About halfway through the night, a little buzzed and trying to navigate the crowded ballroom, I fumbled for my drink. In a classic moment of my signature clumsiness, I tripped over my own feet and literally fell, landing right at the feet of the most breathtaking woman I had ever seen. She was dressed head to toe in shimmering black silk, and her crown wasn't made of plastic. It glinted with obsidian and red jewels that looked far, far too real to be part of a costume. Her eyes, they were like molten gold, sharp and ancient and utterly captivating. When she smiled down at me, a slow, amused curve of her lips, my heart nearly hammered its way out of my chest, trying to play it off to recover some shred of dignity. I did the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. I grabbed that cheap plastic ring from my pocket, held it up, and slid it onto her elegant, long finger. I looked up at her and joked, "Guess that makes us married, huh?" The moment the words left my mouth, the entire room went silent. I don't mean people just stopped talking. I mean, the music died, the chatter vanished, and the very air grew heavy and cold, thick with an energy that made the hair on my arms stand up. And her smile widened, transforming into something beautiful but undeniably predatory. "You dare propose to me?" She purred, her voice a low, melodic hum that vibrated through my bones. I let out a nervous laugh, my face flushing hot. It's just a joke, part of the costume." But before I could finish my sentence, the grand chandeliers above us flickered violently. Shadows in the corners of the room twisted and writhed, stretching across the walls like living ink. From those shadows, figures began to emerge. Horned figures, winged figures, some with fangs that glinted in the dim light. There were dozens of them, and they weren't wearing costumes. They materialized out of nowhere and dropped to their knees, bowing before the woman I had just put a ring on. "Long live the queen," they hissed in perfect, chilling unison. Then their glowing, eyes red green, and gold all turned to me. "Long live her Majesty's bride." My stomach did a complete, horrifying flip. My dumb, ironic joke had just married me to the actual, literal queen of the underworld. Her name, I would soon learn, was Sir, though her terrifying demonic subjects only ever called her my sovereign. She leaned down, her touch surprisingly gentle as she cupped my chin with a cool hand, tilting my face up to meet her gaze. "You are bold, little mortal," she murmured, her golden eyes searching mine. "I accept." The strangest part, the other party guests didn't seem to notice the horned demons bowing on the floor. Maybe they were enchanted. Their minds clouded. Maybe they just thought it was some elaborate, interactive performance. But I knew the truth deep in my gut, that cheap plastic ring had just sealed a pact that was far darker and more real than any Halloween gag. That night, I tried to run. I scrambled out of the mansion, jumped in my car, and floored it all the way home, my heart pounding against my ribs. I locked the doors, bolted the windows, and hid under my covers like a little kid. But the shadows followed me. They danced in the corners of my bedroom, darker than they should have been. My phone buzzed on the nightstand at exactly 3 a.m. I hesitated, but some morbid curiosity made me answer. A low, raspy voice on the other end said, "Your Majesty, the Queen requests your presence." I screamed and threw the phone across the room, where it shattered against the wall. The next day, I was a nervous wreck. I convinced myself it was a nightmare, a hallucination from the cheap punch at the party. Then, my apartment door swung open. No knock, no sound of a key, it just opened. A demon, impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit, stood in the doorway. He bowed so low his horns actually scraped my cheap laminate floorboards. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice smooth but unsettling. "Breakfast has been prepared. The Queen waits." I was dragged politely, but very, very firmly out of my apartment and into a carriage that looked like it was woven from midnight and starlight. It didn't have wheels. It just sort of floated above the street, invisible to the morning commuters rushing by. The carriage carried me down, down, down through a shimmering portal that opened in the earth and into a world beneath our own. We arrived at a palace carved from polished obsidian, lit by eerie, beautiful rivers of flowing fire. And there, waiting on a throne made of bone and crystal, was She watched me approach, not with anger, but with an expression that said she'd been expecting me, as if I had been hers for centuries. "Do not look so frightened," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the vast hall. "You asked for my hand, and I accepted. You are mine now," I stammered, trying to find my voice. "I didn't mean it. It was a joke. A stupid costume party joke." Her laughter rang out like distant thunder, rich and powerful. "Mortals should be far more careful with their promises," she said, her golden eyes twinkling. "In my realm, words are binding. At first, I resisted with everything I had. I was stubborn. I told her I wasn't queen material. I had bills to pay, a cat named Patches to feed, a boring but predictable life to live. But the demons, they treated me with such terrifying, unwavering reverence. They bowed every time I entered a room. They called me Your Majesty. They offered me goblets of shimmering, otherworldly wine and trays of glowing fruit that tasted like nothing on earth. After a while, a strange, treacherous part of me started to wonder what it would be like to just accept it. And Selene herself was impossible to resist. For all her darkness and immense power, she was never cruel to me. She was curious, almost gentle, especially when we were alone. She'd ask me about my world, my terrible office job, my favorite music, my obsession with trashy reality TV. She listened with this intense focus, as if my mundane life was the most fascinating story she'd ever heard. Once, when I was shivering in one of the cooler, cavernous halls, she draped her heavy cloak over my shoulders without a word. It was impossibly soft and smelled of smoke and roses. It felt safe. "You think I trapped you," she murmured one night, her lips brushing against my ear as we stood on a balcony overlooking a river of fire. Her closeness sent a jolt of electricity through me. "But perhaps you trapped me. Do you have any idea how long I've waited for someone bold enough, foolish enough, to put a ring on my finger without fear?" I swallowed hard because the truth was, somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being afraid. I was enchanted. I was drawn in by her power, her grace, and that surprising vulnerability she only ever showed to me. The demons continued to call me Your Majesty. They'd follow my clumsy, accidental commands without question. They brought me little gifts, a glowing flower, a perfectly polished skull, a book written in a language of stars. They even snarled at any other denizen of the underworld who looked at me for a second too long. I should have felt like a prisoner. I should have been desperately trying to escape. But instead, for the first time in my life, I began to feel like a queen. And when Selene finally kissed me truly, deeply kissed me fire, and shadow roared through my veins, a feeling of coming home that I had been waiting for my entire life, without even knowing it. So, maybe I didn't mean to propose to the queen of the underworld. Maybe it was a clumsy, stupid accident. But now, every time her demons bow their heads and whisper in their raspy, devoted voices, "Long live Her Majesty," I can't help but smile, because they're right. I'm hers. And she, in all her dark and glorious power, is mine forever. Thanks so much for hanging out with me and listening to my crazy story. If you liked it, do you forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the worlds you never knew existed. See you next time.